We have Chris Forsberg, our Celtics insider, here with us. Chris Mannix, senior writer over at Sports Illustrated as well. First of all, hearing Steve Nash being let go, not a huge shock because we had heard all off season, Forsberg, that, the guys didn't want him. The guys being, of course, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. They didn't want that head coach and that GM. The Nets have gotten off to a slow start. But then the Ime Udoka news, and I'm like, whoa, hold on a second here, everybody. The news itself isn't surprising, but the fact that the guy was suspended for a year, the Celtics thought he did something bad enough to be suspended for a year, and now he's on the verge of being a head coach again. I'm so confused.
You've seen the situation in Brooklyn, right? It's a little messy. If he's walking into a situation that would presumably welcome him with open arms, it's that disaster of a team down there. And that's not to justify whether it's right or wrong. It's just to say that, it had to be the right situation. And I'm sure they're going to come out and say, we did our due diligence and we've determined that, he's the right fit for our organization. But it didn't surprise me. And it's certainly, as soon as I saw Steve Nash get fired, I said, I know what the next shoe is going to be, because you don't make a move like that without knowing what your next step is. And so now it becomes, the next week is going to be quite interesting.
Yeah, Mannix, what are you hearing? I know you've been following and reporting on this story all day. Is the hiring of Ime Udoka imminent?
Yeah, it was a little perplexing to hear Sean Marks really categorically deny that he has settled on the next head coach, when all indications are, from what I've been told, that Ime Udoka will be that next head coach. The Nets have spent the better part of the last 3 days really intensely vetting the Ime Udoka suspension, trying to discern exactly what happened and exactly what they'd be getting themselves into if they hired Ime to be their next head coach. And I've been told they're comfortable enough with what they learned to bring Ime Udoka on board. There has been contact with Ime Udoka's representatives over the last few days that predate the firing of Steve Nash on Tuesday. So it is a little surprising. I do believe, whether it's tomorrow, the end of the week, whenever, we will see Ime Udoka hired as the next head coach in Brooklyn.
Okay, so I think our natural inclination when the Nash news broke was, oh boy, can they go after Ime Udoka? That's exactly what they did. And then I think the next step, Mannix, for all of us is, wow, well, at least the Celtics are going to get something big in return for this, right? Like maybe a draft pick, or at least a future draft pick, because this is essentially a trade in ways, because Udoka is still under contract. So why are the Celtics not seeking any kind of compensation and just, as we've heard reported, allowing Ime Udoka to freely go wherever he wants to go?
Well, it's a good question, because certainly the Celtics could have at least attempted to exert some leverage in this situation. But I've always believed, and this is more just maybe reading of the tea leaves than anything else, but I've always believed that the Celtics kind of just wanted this to be over, right? Like, they didn't hire Joe Mazzulla to be a stopgap coach for 1 year. They're hoping, and have been hoping, that Joe Mazzulla distinguishes himself enough to be the next long-term head coach of this team. They didn't make overtures to Jay Larranaga, Brad Stevens' former assistant, to leave the Clippers and come in for 1 year. They were going to bring him in to be a fixture on the staff of Joe Mazzulla. So Ime Udoka was never coming back as the head coach in Boston. And I really do believe that at some point over the next couple of months, if this Brooklyn situation had not arisen, that we would have seen some kind of separation agreement between the Celtics and Ime Udoka that would have settled the contractual issues that remain between Udoka and Boston. So while they certainly could have tried to hold this up, I just believe personally that this is just a situation the Celtics want to remove themselves from, and this was a pretty clean way to do it.
I just think back to right before, when this story first broke, that little dark cloud that hovered over the Celtics on media day and their players having to answer about it. And the longer it went without a resolution, it just would have been there for this. And I think the Celtics are eager to just sort of push past it. And, there's certainly money involved, and that's part of the reason that if he's willing to step away and go take another job, you're probably off the hook on that. I think you do have to factor that into the matter. But I do think, the Celtics have shown ultimate confidence here in Joe Mazzulla. I think they're just eager for this to just rip the Band-Aid a little bit and just move on, because just as Mannix said, in my mind, there was no situation in which Ime Udoka was going to be back coaching this team And the Nets know that too, so they're not going to give up anything if you know that you're trying to get off of them anyway.
Well, that's the perfect segue, because I do wonder, how Celtics players are feeling about the news, guys. We'll look really quickly here. Jaylen Brown posted an Instagram story about it. Wasn't much, no commentary or anything. He just posted a link to the story, I believe from ESPN. But back in late September during the team's media day, both Brown and Tatum were asked about how they found out about the news that Ime Udoka would be initially suspended by the Celtics. Here's how they responded.
How did I find out? Yeah. On Twitter, like everybody else. And then, yeah, it is. It's just an unfortunate situation. All things considered, nobody expected this.
Initial reactions, like you said, I was a little confused, but nobody really has any of the information, so it's kind of difficult to really make a comment on, how things were supposed to go, how the process went or anything, so.
So, Forsberg, I get what you're saying when you say the team wants a resolution, they want an answer, they want to rip the Band-Aid off. But if you take those players and their reaction there at face value, that they didn't have a lot of information about what happened, how do you imagine, and maybe you've had a chance to talk to some players, but how do you think they're feeling right now? They're like, hold on a second. Our coach couldn't be our coach this year. He was suspended for a year by our team, but 2 weeks into the regular season, the Brooklyn Nets, really went back to like the 90s there for a second. The Brooklyn Nets are like, we took a look at it. We don't see the same problems. We're happy to bring him not just to another team, but a team that has really become a rival of the Celtics. And they're going to see him multiple times in a year and maybe in the playoffs. It's not like he's going to a West Coast team. How do you think they're feeling about it?
I'm interested. Like, we'll find out tomorrow morning. Shoot around will be the first chance for the players to react. Maybe we'll get some earnest and honest reaction from them and find out like exactly how they're feeling. I'm sure like all of us, as we've seen everything now learns through Twitter, they've got to process it and figure it out. I have seen some like interesting theories about why Jaylen, and again, that's all we know, is like it was very discreet about just putting in the picture of Ime and Katie. Can I tell you my favorite interpretation?
Yeah.
That remember who was in trade rumors for Katie this summer?
Yes.
I wonder if I don't know. Maybe Ime wanted that. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I thought it was interesting.
That maybe he's like, fine, you want him?
You want
go
Katie
coach
so bad?
him. You want to go coach him. What do you think about that, Mannix? How do you feel like the players are responding? And is Forsberg right? Does Jaylen Brown look at this and go, I guess it's the guy you always wanted anyway, so good riddance?
I don't know about how Jaylen Brown is interpreting it, but you really can't convince me that inside that Celtics locker room, they're not wondering why whatever Ime Udoka did was worthy of the basketball death sentence in Boston, but the Nets were willing to jump in and sign him to coach the team a couple of weeks into the season. I can tell you this much. The Nets were not the only team digging around Ime Udoka. A lot of teams were. Some of them were doing it just out of morbid curiosity because they wanted to know why the Celtics were willing to exile their coach coming off a final season. What did Ime Udoka do? What happened? People wanted to know information, some of it out of morbid curiosity, but there were teams out there, front offices out there that were looking at it as preliminary research, that they wanted to see what exactly they might be dealing with. Because I believe if the Nets are comfortable making a move like this, then that means there would have been other teams comfortable making a move like this. Hypothetically speaking, like if Philadelphia's season goes off the rails, Ime Udoka was a coach there. San Antonio, how long is Greg Popovich going to be there? He's got a lot of affection for Ime Udoka. So I just think that there's been a lot of intrigue and a lot of investigating going on over the last month across the NBA about the circumstances around this suspension.
And I can't wait for the introductory press conference because Ime will be asked these questions, the Nets will be asked these questions, and we'll see if we get truthful answers.
Well, and that's the thing. I think one of the most fascinating things about this is we know very little real details on what happened to cause Ime Udoka to lose his job. And I think we've all been wondering, is it as bad as some have indicated? Or is it not as bad as some have indicated? And how are Celtics, not just Celtics players, but Celtics fans going to feel when they find out the final story? Are they going to say and look and say, hey, the Celtics did the right thing? Or could it backfire on the Celtics? I think it's a fascinating story, and we, of course, will be following it.